turned Claude into my personal assistant, and now it can literally do everything. So as you guys can see, we've connected Claude to an MCP server trigger node, so we can hook up Claude to n8n. And then we have that connected to an ultimate assistant agent, which has a bunch of sub agents. Now the sub agents for the ultimate assistant agent are the email agent, the calendar agent, the contact agent, and the lead generation agent. Now the email agent is capable of sending emails, replying to emails, labeling emails, creating drafts, getting emails, getting labels, and marking emails as unread. The calendar agent is capable of updating events, deleting events, getting events, creating events, and creating events with attendees. The contact agent is hooked up to Airtable and it's capable of getting contacts and adding or updating contacts. And then finally, for the lead gen agent or lead gen Joe, it's connected to two sub workflows. The first one is to be able to scrape leads from Apollo, and the second one is to be able to create detailed research reports for any lead. Schedule an AI consultation meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. with John Smith, and send him a calendar invite with a confirmation email. As you can see, Claude's going to ask for my permission to connect to n8n. And then just like that, it says, great, I've scheduled your AI consultation with John Smith for tomorrow at 10 a.m. and I've sent him a calendar invite with a confirmation email. So if we come to my calendar, you can see that indeed tomorrow, which is Sunday the 13th of April, there is a consultation called AI consultation with John Smith. And if we go to my email, you can see that 0 minutes ago, there was an email sent to johnsmith@gmail.com saying, Dear John Smith, I'm writing to confirm our AI consultation meeting tomorrow for 10 a.m. Please let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything specific you'd like to discuss during the meeting. So I didn't even give it the actual email address for John Smith. I just said send it to John Smith. And then it went and looked inside the actual Airtable database and it said, okay, this is John Smith. That's his email address, got that email address, and then sent the email. Now let's say I've changed my mind and I want to move the meeting to 11 a.m. Move the meeting with John to 11 a.m. instead and notify him of the change. Just like that, we're going to have to give permission again. And then just like that, Claude confirms that it's changed the time to 11. And then if we take a look at my calendar, you can see that the event is now at 11 a.m. And we've sent another email to John Smith saying, Dear John Smith, I'm writing to confirm the change of our AI consultation meeting to 11 a.m. instead. Please let me know if you have any questions or you need further assistance. Now let's try a different one. Let's say share my availability for this Friday with KirgSM via email. Let's give permission. And just like that, Claude said that it sent the availability. And then if we take a look at my actual email address, you can see that 0 minutes ago, I did receive an email from kirgsm.dev, which is my other email address, that says, Dear Kia, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to share my availability for Friday, April 18th for the following times, 7 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And if we come have a look at my actual calendar, you can see that there is indeed only times available at about 7 a.m. to 8:45 and 2 p.m. to about 5 p.m. So what's actually happening is Claude Desktop is communicating with the MCP server trigger by sending off queries, and that query is coming over to a delegator agent, which is then delegating the task to different sub-agents depending on the actual task in hand. So for example, in the case of the actual calendar availability demo that we just did, the ultimate assistant agent is saying, okay, well, I've got to figure out first what sort of calendar availabilities we have on Friday. So it's asking the calendar agent is calling on the get events tool, then it's coming back up to the actual ultimate assistant. And then the ultimate assistant saying, now I need to send an email to KirgSM. So it's like, okay, well, first I've got to ask the contact agent to figure out exactly what the email address for KirgSM is. And then once it gets that information, it comes back up. And then with that information, the ultimate assistant or the delegator agent then delegates a task to the actual email agent to send off that email using the send email tool, along with the email address of the person that it's meant to send it to, and the actual information, which is the availabilities that we got from the other sub-agent. Now, as you guys can see, this is extremely powerful, and you can literally grow this and scale it to however many sub-agents you want. Now, honestly, isn't that a glimpse into the future? As all the big companies like Google and Microsoft and the likes of have been saying, they're trying to make AI agents in a way that every single person has a personal assistant or a personal AI agent that they will communicate with 24/7, and it will know everything about them, and it will be capable of doing a lot of different tasks. And with OpenAI's announcement yesterday that ChatGPT can now remember all past conversations, or it has this like infinite sort of memory, we've moved even closer to that reality than ever before. Now, by making this video, I wanted to show you guys what the future is actually going to look like. And honestly, that's how I see it. The future is going to be your personal assistant or your personal AI agent connected to a multitude of different AI agents out there that are specialized in different tasks. And you can tell your AI agent what you want to achieve, and then it will go and achieve those things. It's going to be absolutely wild. And to further solidify this, Google literally announced their agent-to-agent protocol 2 days ago. And they say that the A2A or agent-to-agent protocol complements Anthropic's MCP, because it allows any agent to communicate with any other agent. So in the future, what you'd have is systems that have thousands of different agents communicating with each other in order to achieve a multitude of dynamic tasks. It's actually going to be wild. But with that being said, the current capabilities in terms of building reliable AI agents is still quite limited. And so building multi-agent systems with thousands of sub-agents is not really that realistic, because your agent is just not going to be reliable, consistent, and accurate. But with the current developments and the speed at which large language models are advancing, it's really not going to be that long until we are capable of achieving these insanely smart personal assistants that are connected to thousands of other sub-agents. Now, before I show you guys a couple more demos and tell you exactly what's going on inside the workflows, I wanted to let you guys know that I'm giving you guys access to all of these templates inside my free Skool community, so you guys can literally go and download them, import them into your new workflow, and set it up for yourself in literally no time. Now, in order to do this, all you have to do is click on the link in the description down below, which is going to take you to my free Skool community. Then you're going to go to YouTube resources, find the video with the title that's the same as the title of this video, click on it, and then download the files that say .json. And then once you've downloaded those files, you want to open up a new workflow, click on these 3 buttons at the top, go to import from file, and import each of those JSON files one by one so you can actually set up the entire workflow. Now, with that being said, I would love for you guys to join my free Skool community. I'm trying to get it to 10,000 members. We have fun competitions. We update you guys with weekly AI news. And we have a classroom section where I take you guys through fundamentals of building AI agents and the fundamentals of AI as a whole. I even have an n8n masterclass, and I give you guys access to all of my best n8n templates for completely free. So I hope to see you guys in there, but otherwise, let's get back to the video. Now, I'm quickly going to send myself a proposal email saying, "Hi mate, here's the proposal. The price is $2 million USD for a back rub. Kind regards, Kia." And if I come back to my email address, you can see that we've now received it here saying here's a proposal and the rest of the email as I explained it. And now let's say you couldn't be bothered to actually reply to this email. You could just go to Claude and say, reply to the latest email from Kia saying I'll be reviewing the proposal and we'll get back to him tomorrow. And then just like that, Claude is going to ask us for permission to connect with n8n. We'll say allow once. And then Claude's going to say, I've replied to Kyrgyzstam's latest email with your message letting him know that we'll be reviewing the proposal and we'll get back to him tomorrow. And if we come have a look here, you can see that indeed there has been a reply saying, I will be reviewing the proposal and we'll get back to you tomorrow. Now, in the multi-agent system that we built, what should have happened is Claude Desktop should have queried the MCP server trigger, which would send that query over to the ultimate assistant. And now the ultimate assistant has access to the query that we passed to Claude. And in this instance, the query was reply to the latest email from Kyrgyzstan saying I'll be reviewing the proposal and we'll get back to you tomorrow. Now, once the ultimate assistant had access to that query, it has to figure out how it can solve that problem. So if we come and have a look at the actual ultimate assistant, you can see that indeed we did receive that query from Claude. And then the ultimate assistant decided to first call on the contact agent asking to get the email address associated with Kyrgyzstan inside the contact database. And then once it got the response, which was Kia's email address, it told the email agent to go and reply to Kyrgyzstan's latest email with the message, I'll be reviewing the proposal and we'll get back to you tomorrow. And it said this is the actual email address. And for some reason, it thinks that I'm a girl. So what can you do? And then if we go over to the email agent, you can see that we received a query from the other agent with the exact same details that I told you guys just before. And then the actual email agent decided that first it should get the email associated with kia@comexa.ai, which is the email address for Kyrgyzstan. And then once it receives that email, it will then go and respond to that email with the details defined by the delegator AI agent. So then coming back here, the ultimate assistant basically first called onto the contact agent, got the email address, then sent a query to the email agent to actually reply to the email from that person. So the email agent first figured out which email it has to reply to, and then it actually sent the reply to that email. So now let's take a look at how you can actually set this up for yourself. So once you've downloaded all the JSON files, you have to import them into different workflows one by one. The first one that you should start with is the one labeled MCP server. Now, as I said before, the MCP server trigger node is what's allowing you to communicate with Claude. So just like a normal webhook trigger, when Claude figures out that there's a query or something that it has to solve, it sends that over to the MCP server trigger node, which triggers an automation and sends that over to the other delegator ultimate assistant agent. So to hook this up, what you guys have to do is first click on the MCP server trigger node. You're going to see that there's two things. Number one, a test URL, and number two, a production URL. What you guys want to do is click on the production URL so you can copy it to clipboard. And then you want to come out of here. You want to save the workflow and you want to activate it. So once you've activated the workflow, what you want to do is download Claude Desktop. Just search up Claude Desktop, click on download Claude, and then choose whichever operating system you guys have. And then once you've opened Claude, what you guys want to do is click on Claude settings and then go to developer and click on edit config. Now this should bring up a file that says Claude desktop config.json. You want to double click on that. And then what we want to do is we want to be able to edit that config.json file in any sort of text editor or code editor. Now in this instance, I'm using Cursor, but you guys can realistically use anything you want. So what you guys want to do once you have the config.json file open is you want to copy and paste this very exact same bit of code directly into your config.json file. Now I'm going to give you guys access to this code also inside the free Skool community, so don't have to worry about screenshotting or memorizing it right now. So then once you've copied the code inside the config.json file, what you have to do is you have to replace this URL with the production URL from n8n. So you want to come back to n8n, click on MCP server trigger, go back to production URL, click on it again just to make sure that you do have it saved. Come back here and then replace it with this URL. And then once you've done that, you want to click on file and you want to save it. And then you want to just come out of this, come out of this, come out of this, and then close Claude and open it again. So then once you've closed Claude and opened it again, you should see that now next to this hammer sign, it says there is one MCP tool available, and that is your personal assistant. So if we come back to take a look here, the MCP tool that we've given it access to is indeed called Personal Assistant. Now, if you guys wanted to make this infinitely more complex, you definitely could, and you don't necessarily have to delegate it to another agent. What you could literally do is treat this MCP server trigger node like an agent itself and give it access to different tools. So you can literally just search up any tool, any native integration you want, like you can connect it to a vector store, or you can connect it directly to Airtable, or you can even connect it directly to your Google Calendar. And then you just hook it up exactly the same way as how you'd hook up an AI agent. And the idea behind this MCP server trigger node, or MCP as a whole, is that it allows you to not have to front load all of the information about the different tools and how you should query them and how you should use them directly inside the actual prompt or the system message for the AI agent. Instead, what MCP allows you to do is that anytime an AI agent wants to actually use some sort of tool, it would basically just ask the server, how am I meant to use this tool? And then once it receives a response saying, this is exactly how you're meant to use this tool, then it will send the actual instructions over of what it wants to achieve. And then that tool will achieve that thing for itself. So to conceptualize this, let's take a look at the actual calendar agent. So in this instance, the calendar agent is connected to a multitude of different tools. But what we've had to do is that we've had to explain inside the system message exactly what each of the tools are and how the AI agent is meant to use or query those tools. And then inside the actual tools, we've defined which parameters we want the AI agent to be able to control. And we've had to explain to the AI agent how it's meant to control those parameters. Now, this is an example of not using MCP to have your AI agent connect to different apps and softwares and tools and other AI agents. But in the future, what will happen is your calendar agent would be connected to one MCP server that's the Google Calendar MCP server. And instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different tools, it will just ask the Google Calendar server, how am I meant to create an event? The Google Calendar server will respond to it, and then using that instruction, it will then tell the Google Calendar server to go and create that event for it. So in super simple terms, what this will achieve is AI agents that can communicate with literally any software or tool out there without needing to know exactly how that tool or software works in advance, and by using literally natural language. But coming back here, the MCP server trigger is communicating with a tool called the personal assistant. Now in this instance, how we've set up the personal assistant is we've just said call n8n workflow tool. And what this does is that it allows the MCP server trigger, or basically the large language model behind the MCP server trigger, to use any workflow inside your n8n account. So in this instance, what we did is we gave it access to the ultimate personal assistant sub workflow, which is this one here. And we told it that when you want to communicate with this sub workflow, all you have to do is send over a query in natural language. And as you guys can see, Claude did exactly that when it wanted to achieve its task. But do keep in mind, all of this is still very early days in terms of the actual capabilities of large language models themselves, and also the capabilities that we have inside n8n to be able to set up these MCP servers and MCP clients. So in practice, all of this is going to be much more simplified and easier to do in the future. But at the moment, you kind of have to glue different pieces together. So with that being said, just by clicking this plus tools button, you can make Claude have access to any workflow, any tool, any piece of code. And by literally doing that, Claude is now an AI agent that can literally achieve anything. So I could technically make a workflow that's infinitely complex with 1,000 different nodes defining a very specific complex automation. And then I can hook it up to this when executed by another workflow trigger. And then I can hook that up to the MCP server trigger, which will then give Claude access to that workflow. So now instead of you having to go and use n8n yourself to click on test workflow, you can just tell Claude. Claude will decide, okay, maybe I should go to talk to that workflow, and then it will send the query over to that workflow and run that workflow. So how I see it, as I said, is in the future, you'd literally come up here, click on the Claude button, and then it will say, what can I help you with today? And you can just write down whatever your heart desires, and then it will go and achieve that task for you. But right now, that's still considered theory. Anyway, so once you want to connect yourself to a sub workflow, what you have to do is give a description for that sub workflow. So if we come back here and click on the hammer button, you can see that Claude has access to the description that we gave it, saying this tool is a multi-agent system capable of the following. I taught it what the actual multi-agent system is capable of. And then I just gave it a rule saying that you should always make the query detailed so the sub agent knows exactly what you're talking about. So then once you have the description set up, you also have to say what sort of inputs have to be sent to the actual server so you can use the tools underneath it. So in this instance, the only input is the query that we're sending over to the ultimate assistant. By clicking this star button, what will happen is you will say this is an input that the AI agent has to define. But if I wanted to, I could remove this and I could hard code what input I want to send for that specific parameter every single time. Now let's take a look at the actual ultimate assistant. So the ultimate assistant is also connected to, as I said, a when executed by another workflow trigger, which would trigger once the MCP server trigger actually calls onto it. And then the ultimate assistant, as you guys can see, has a system message. The system message has an overview, tools, rules, and example section, which is pretty standard for building AI agents on n8n at the moment. The overview section is basically just telling the ultimate assistant what its core purpose is. And then the tools section is defining what each tool is. So you have the email agent, the calendar agent, contact agent, and lead gen Joe. And it's basically just saying in very simple terms when you should call onto each of these agents. And then we've defined a bunch of rules to make sure that we are controlling how the AI agent is actually behaving. And then it's always best practice to give the AI agent at least one example of a pretty complex query and how the AI agent should handle that query. So the idea of this ultimate assistant agent is to not have to have access to 1,000 different tools underneath it. So what we could have done was instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4 different sub agents underneath the actual ultimate assistant, we could have just grabbed all of these tools and we could have gave access directly to the ultimate assistant. So the ultimate assistant would call on the different tools by itself. But if we wanted to do that right now, what would happen is we'd have to explain to the ultimate assistant exactly how it's meant to send an email, how it's meant to reply to an email, how it's meant to label an email, create a draft, this. We would have to literally explain how to do every single thing inside the prompt. And if you guys have actually built an AI agent on n8n, you know that by doing that, the accuracy of your AI agent will go through the floor. And the reason for that is in general, when you prompt a large language model, the smaller the prompt is, or the less number of tokens and words that are inside that prompt, the better that large language model performs when it's actually completing the task inside that prompt. So at this very moment in time, giving access to, I don't know, what is this, like 20 different tools or workflows to one single large language model or one single AI agent node would give you a system that's extremely unreliable. As I said, in the very near future, when all of these different tools are sitting in one single MCP server, so that's one MCP server, that's another one, and then that's another one, and the other one would also be another MCP server, what would happen is you can give all of these access to your ultimate personal assistant or that single AI agent, and you wouldn't have to front load all of that information inside the prompt. The AI agent will just know that this is one MCP server, that's another one, and that's another one, and then it can ask the MCP server how it's meant to do each thing, and then on the go, it's able to do different things. And that, my friends, is the value of MCP and why everyone is going crazy over it. So now if we take a look at the actual email agent, it's also a similar thing connected to a when executed by another workflow trigger node, which is going to trigger it when the ultimate assistant calls onto it. And then the email agent also has a prompt, but inside the prompt of the email agent, we're now telling it which tools it actually has access to, which is all of the different email tools that we talked about before. And as you can see, this information is a little bit more granular because the email agent has to decide how it's going to use multiple tools to achieve a certain objective. So in this case, the email agent is the subject matter expert when it comes to emails. And so when it's given a task like replying to an email, it knows that the first thing it should do is figure out which email, and then the second thing it should do is actually send that email off as a reply. And so by getting the email agent to be a specialist in emails, now the ultimate assistant doesn't need to be a specialist in emails as well. It just needs to know when it's meant to send off a query to the email agent. Now to set up each of these tools underneath the email agent, what you guys have to do is basically just connect yourself to your email address, which is just a simple sign-in. It's very easy to do. And then you want to define which parameters you want the email agent to be able to control. So in this case, we want to be able to say who we're sending emails to, what the subject line for the email should be, and what the type of email is. So it's HTML in this case. And we also allow the AI agent to define the actual message that we're sending through inside that email. And the same exact thing for the other tools. And as I said, inside the actual prompt, we're just saying what those tools are and when and how it's meant to use them. So let's come back here and say label KirgSM's email as to do. What we're basically saying is to go and label the most recent email that KirgSM sent, which is the proposal email, which should be in the context of Claude, as to do inside my email account. Now, as you guys can see, Claude says it looks like the to-do label doesn't actually exist inside your email system. And if I come here, you guys can see that indeed we don't actually have a label for to do. So let's create a label called to do and save that. And then let's come back and tell Claude to try again. We're going to allow it. And as you guys can see, Claude now says that it has successfully labeled the email as to do. So if I come here and go to the to do section, you can see that indeed the most recent email from Kia, which is here's the proposal email, is now inside my to do section. And then if we come back to the actual agent, you can see that inside the email agent first decided to get one email from kia@comexa.ai, which is the most recent email, and then get all the labels to figure out what are the actual labels inside my email account. And then once it figured out the labels, it then labeled the actual email with the label ID associated with to do. And so just like that, we had the email move to the to do section. So now let's take a look at the calendar agent. Let's say cancel the AI consultation planned for tomorrow at 11 a.m. As you guys can see, Claude is going to give you a request saying, hey, should I connect to n8n? And it's actually going to tell you what query it's sending across. So in this case, the query is cancel the AI consultation meeting with John Smith, scheduled for tomorrow at 11 a.m. So it's using the context or the memory that it has from the conversation that I just had with it to know that the meeting for tomorrow at 11 a.m. is indeed the one that we created for John Smith. And if I click on allow, it's basically just going to think for a couple of seconds. But in reality, what it's doing is it's actually triggering this MCP server trigger node, which is then sending that query across to the ultimate assistant. And then the ultimate assistant is first calling onto the contact agent to figure out who John Smith is and what the email address is. And then it's sending that information over to the calendar agent to cancel the consultation with John Smith. And then it's even going above and beyond and actually sending an email to John Smith, notifying them that the meeting has been cancelled for tomorrow. So as you can see, it's using these three agents. Now, if I go to my sent emails, you can see that indeed it has sent an email saying cancellation of AI consultation meeting. Dear John Smith, I hope this email finds you well. We've had to cancel the meeting for tomorrow at 11 a.m. And now if we come back to the calendar agent, you can see that it's using these two tools. First is figuring out exactly what event it's meant to cancel, and then it's going and deleting that or canceling that event. And for the actual prompt of the calendar agent, we also have an overview section, which is basically just telling it what its role is or what its overall purpose is. And then it's saying what tools it should use and when it should use them. And then in terms of the tools, again, what you guys want to do is you want to connect yourself to your Google Calendar. And that's literally just a simple sign in. So it's very easy. Just click on that, click on create new credential and sign in. And then you want to define what parameters you want the AI agent to be able to control for each of the tools. So in this instance, for deleting events, all we need to do is define the event ID. So you can click on this star button, and that means that now the AI agent is capable of deleting the event. But for example, for the instance of the actual calendar, I've decided that it should always only access my calendar, so I didn't let the AI agent decide which calendar it should use. So I hard-coded that in there, so every time it only uses my calendar, but now the only capability that the AI agent actually has is to be able to delete events using an event ID that it will define and actually will get by getting events inside this tool. So it will get events or get the event ID and then delete it with the delete event tool. And just to show you guys as well, we basically have two field nodes that are basically just defining what response should be sent out from the actual sub agent. So if the response is a success, it will basically just send out the output. But if the response is an error, it will just say unable to perform task, please try again. So the ultimate assistant knows that the sub agent couldn't actually complete that task. Now, if we look at the contact database, you can see that we have a name, an email address, and a phone number for each of our contacts. Now, if you guys want, you can use your actual CRM instead of this. So the AI agent will have access to literally every single contact inside your CRM database. So let's say if we wanted to update one of the contacts, all we have to do is go to Claude and say update Kirgasem's phone number to this phone number here. Send that across. And then just like that, it says it updated the actual contact. And now if I come back to the contact database, you guys can see that my number has indeed been updated to 0414-232-435. So if we come to the contact agent, you guys can see that first, the AI agent actually requested to get a list of all the contacts inside the database. And then once it realized which one is associated with Kirgasem, it went and it changed the phone number of Kirgasem to this information here by updating that entire contact. And then once it was able to successfully do that, it sent off a response saying Kirgasem's phone number has been successfully updated to 0414-232-435. So if we come back here, what basically happened is the contact agent completed, sent it back up to the Ultimate Assistant sent it back up to the MCP server sent it across to Claude, and then Claude responded to us saying I've successfully updated the contact information. Is there anything else I can help you with? Now with the contact agent as well, in the prompt, you have an overview section and then you just explain which tools you want the contact agent to have access to. And if you guys wanted to use your own database, what you do is just click on plus tools. You try to find your database here. Like for example, if you have HubSpot, it's a native integration. If you have something that doesn't have a native integration, you can still connect to it. All you have to do, click on HTTP request tool and then go and fill it up so you can connect to it via API. And if you guys don't necessarily know how to do that yourselves, all you have to do is open up Perplexity and then tell Perplexity what you're trying to do. So you can say, I want to connect to my Go high level CRM. Provide me with the exact curl request I should paste into my n8n HTTP request node. And the beauty of Perplexity is that it's literally going to go and search up the internet, read through the API documentation for Go high level, and then give you a curl request that you can literally copy and paste into an actual HTTP request node by clicking on import curl. And then that will tell you which parameters you have to fill up. All you have to then do is actually, for example, get your API key, fill up the parameters here, and then go and replicate the same thing on the actual tool so you can connect to that API. And finally, let's try and demo Lead Gen Joe, which is our lead generation AI agent, capable of scraping leads and also researching leads. Let's just say, can you send me a research report on this account? And I've put in my own LinkedIn account. Send that through. Claude's going to realize that it has to talk to n8n. It's going to ask us whether it can communicate with n8n. We say yes. And then it sends that information over to the MCP server, which will then call onto the Ultimate Assistant, which will then call on to the lead generation agent, which will then call on to the lead research workflow, which will activate the lead research workflow, which will go through these set of logical nodes. So first this one, then 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 this one, and so on. And then eventually, once it gets the response, it will come back to the lead agent, which will come back to the Ultimate Assistant, which will come back to the MCP server, which will come back to Claude. So with that being said, a really important thing here is that now, in this instance, we didn't actually have a, let's say, software that was capable of doing this exact task. There's no software out there right now that I know of that can scrape people on LinkedIn and then go and look at their Trustpilot reviews and research them online and then do analysis on them with large language models and then create a report from that and send you an email. There's literally no tool right now that does that exactly the way that you want to do it. So what you do is you'd come to n8n, you would create this exact workflow using the logic that you want, and then you will literally just give the AI agent access to that workflow. So the AI agent will say, okay, I have to call into this workflow, and it knows what that workflow does because you gave it a description, and it knows how it's meant to call on to the workflow, which in this instance, we said all you have to give it is a LinkedIn URL. But what's interesting is that when we come back to Claude, Claude says, I apologize, but I was not able to complete the research on the LinkedIn profile for KyrgyzSM due to a timeout error, which is actually perfect because I wanted to show this to you guys. So basically what Claude's saying is that it timed out. So if I come back here and I go to lead Gen Joe, you can see that the workflow for lead Gen Joe is still running. 2 minutes and 40 seconds ago it started running, and now it's still running. But Claude currently has a timeout sort of threshold that it probably waits, let's say 2 minutes. And if it doesn't receive a response back in that 2-minute time frame, it's just going to say it didn't work, and it's going to stop trying to talk to the MCP server. But in reality, you can see that the MCP server, or the actual workflow behind the MCP server, is still executing. So it didn't actually fail. And as you guys can see, if I open up my email address, you can see that 0 minutes ago, I indeed did get a research report sent to me with myself and my company and all the information that came out of that specific workflow. But from the perspective of Claude, it doesn't know any of that because it literally just timed out. Now, if you guys want to know how I built Lead Gen Joe that's literally capable of scraping hundreds of leads from Apollo by literally a voice command, or even creating detailed research reports like the one that I just showed you and sending it directly to your email address, I made a video on this a couple of days ago that I'm going to put in the description down below that you guys can go and watch and literally set this up for yourself in less than an hour. As you guys saw in this video, we're fast approaching a world where AI agents are literally everywhere and they're capable of doing almost anything. And also with the recent advancements like MCP and A2A from Google and memory from OpenAI, we're approaching a world where literally everyone has a personal assistant inside their pocket that they can give any task to, and that personal assistant can go and perform it for them. But at this very moment in time, that's still a little bit of science fiction. Now, just before I close off with the video, I wanted to give a special shout out to n8n, because he's the one that actually made the majority of that personal assistant, and I was able to build on top of that. And honestly, my friends, that is the beauty of the AI community, because everyone open sources and releases their workflows, and everyone else is able to build upon it and specialize it for their own use cases. So I'd strongly recommend, if you guys also are working on a pretty cool project, open source it, make a video on it, and let other people also get value and learn from your workflows. And as I said, all of the workflows for this personal assistant, including Lead Gen Joe, are going to be in the description down below, so you guys can literally go and download them and tweak them for your own use case. So that brings us to the end of yet another automation tutorial. If you guys found this video valuable, I'd really appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below. It really helps motivate me to make more and more of these tutorials, and it also helps more and more people get access to them. Now, I wish you all the best on your automation journey, and I'll see you in the next one.